What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the Beastmaster Advanced Class in Middle-earth Shadow of War. I'm going to give you a quick run through on them, what their traits do, where they're most effective, and of course, my opinions on the pros and cons. My name is Parkattack. Let's get going. So the first thing you might be asking yourself is, what class can become a Beastmaster? Well, as it turns out, any class can become a Beastmaster. Whether it's Warrior, Marksman, Olog, Defender, Savage, and of course Hunter, any of these classes has the potential to become a Beastmaster. So then of course the natural follow-up to that question is, well, which class is best at Beastmaster? In my own personal opinion, there isn't one single class that's superior. Their main trait, Beast Slayer, which we'll get into a little later, makes it so that every class, no matter if it's ranged or melee or tanky or not, allows them all to deal with beasts the same. It's also because of this trait that hunters don't naturally get the edge. While they do deal more damage to beasts on a base level, that really doesn't matter when you have the Beast Slayer trait. The only thing I can really say as far as classes come is to just try to avoid warriors. Warriors' kind of special gimmick is that they can become any advanced class, but they have no special abilities of their own. Because of this, warriors are generally inferior to other advanced classes, no matter what the advanced class is. So in the case of Beastmaster, where any class can become it, as long as you stay away from warriors, you should be fine. But this is Shadow of War, so if you happen to get a warrior with the perfect traits, it'll still outperform all the other classes that don't have them. So now let's get into the traits for the Beastmaster. Now there are a number of guaranteed traits, and then there are a number of possible traits that you might see on a more rare Beastmaster. So to start things off, let's start with the guaranteed traits. Bestial Roar is a trait that will call in more Caragors to fight for the Beastmaster, and it'll kind of heal and juice up other Caragors that are present at the time. This doesn't exactly enrage them, but it is kind of a kick in the ass to make them attack a target rather than just walk around looking at stuff, as they kind of do sometimes. This trait is fine as it can be constantly used to summon more Caragors during a fight, but seeing as Caragors are pretty weak and pretty easy to deal with even for other orcs, it's by no means a top tier trait. Caragor Tamer, the next Beastmaster trait, is pretty much the same. Rather than summoning new Caragors, you can convert enemy Caragors into allied Caragors, which once again is fine, but Caragors are kind of the least of your problems on the battlefield. Now, speaking of Caragors, Beastmasters also come by default with Caragor Pack as their followers. This makes sense, and it works pretty well in tandem with Bestial Roar, but once again, Caragors just really aren't that great. Now, we've gotten to this far in the traits, and you're thinking, okay, so far Beastmasters sound like total shit. They have 3 traits that pertain directly to Caragors, and you're telling me that Caragors suck. Well, the next trait we're going to talk about is the main reason why Beastmasters are viable at all. Beast Slayer is actually a trait that any advanced class can receive, but Beastmasters are guaranteed to roll with it. This trait allows any beast in the game to be one-shot and immediately killed by the orc, so long as they're within melee range. This includes Graugs and Drakes, although since Drakes like to fly around in the air a lot, it's usually harder to get it to activate. Having an orc with Beast Slayer on the battlefield can make things much more easy and much less chaotic, especially in situations of large-scale battle such as fortress sieges and defense. The epic champion trait for Beastmasters is Epic Graug Call, which is actually really good, especially in the aforementioned situations. This will call in a Graug that is already allied, so it will immediately start attacking enemies and largely ignore your allies. Now, with all of the guaranteed traits out of the way, let's talk about the possible traits that you can roll with if you're lucky enough to get a rare Beastmaster. These 3 traits are all similar, as they all allow the Beastmaster to summon a separate type of beast alongside Caragors. The first one of these 3 is Den Mother, which allows the summoning of ghouls. Ghouls aren't amazing in combat, but it adds more allies onto the battlefield, and it adds more things for the enemies to be distracted by, which is always a good thing when there's a lot of enemies on the battlefield. Spider Summoner is the second rare summon trait, which is actually pretty good as it summons spiders, which will immediately latch onto and poison enemies. The final one, Drake Lure, is obviously the coolest, but arguably the least valuable. This is because of the fact that when the Drake is summoned, it comes in as a wild Drake rather than an allied Drake. This means that instead of just straight up targeting enemies, it'll target allies and enemies alike. This can be useful, but can also be just as damaging to your own troops as well as the enemies, which kind of forces you to keep your head up and dominate it as soon as it's summoned. So, now that we've gone over all of the traits and all of the classes, let's do a quick recap and talk about my personal opinions on where I think they're most effective on the battlefield. What we just learned is that one of the coolest things about Beastmasters is that there are a set number of special summons that you can get on a rare occasion with Beastmasters. In my personal opinion, Spider Summoner is the best. This is because it works well, it's disruptive, and poison causes enemies to start throwing up, which basically just means that they stop attacking. While the Beastmaster's traits aren't exactly awesome on their own, there are a couple of hates that go really well alongside the Beastmaster traits. The first one, and probably the most obvious one, is Bestial Frenzy. This causes your orc to become enraged when it slays a beast, and with every Beastmaster rolling with Beast Slayer, which automatically lets them kill beasts in one shot, you can obviously see the synergy. The second best hate you can get is Devoted Master. This one is a close second, as it causes your captain to become enraged whenever his pets are being killed. This one won't proc quite as often as Bestial Frenzy because the entire group of pets has to be killed in order to trigger it. But when your Beastmaster is starting with a pack of Caragors, and then it's constantly summoning more with Bestial Roar, Devoted Master is definitely a trait that will keep your captain enraged for long periods of time. With either Bestial Frenzy or Devoted Master as hates, Beastmasters can really be good anywhere, as the uptime on their enrage will be near constant. But the only place where Beastmasters really thrive is in Fortress, Siege, and Defenses, where there are lots of enemies that can be affected by beasts, and enemy beasts run rampant. Having one or two Beastmasters in the mix on your side will help eliminate the enemy's number of beasts, as well as summoning more allied beasts for your side. The last thing to really note here is the weakness Beast Fodder. If you aren't familiar, this causes beasts to deal more damage to the captain. When it comes to Beastmasters, you might think that this is somewhat of an Achilles heel, but in reality, it's actually irrelevant, as Beast Slayer will ensure that the Beastmaster is able to kill beasts before they're even able to do any damage to them. Alright then guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed it. Once again, my name is Park Attack. Peace.